Hi guys, welcome to my new video. Koi varieties. Quite a daunting subject, can be quite complicated. So I'm going to break it down, keep it nice and simple. I'm going to make it a bit more interesting as well. Got lots of images for you, got a little bit of history, a little bit about why koi came to be called what they're called, what the names, the Japanese names actually mean in English, etc. A few little bits of facts and a few bit of history, you know, just to keep it interesting. Yeah, really looking forward to this video. It's a really interesting subject, so yeah, let's get straight into it. Okay, so there's hundreds and hundreds of different varieties of koi now, and that list is growing all the time. And there's lots of different systems for grouping them together and classifying them. For example, the show circuit, different countries, different committees, different groups, organisations have different classifications. For example, the All Japan Show, I think there's 21 groups at the moment for classifying koi in. So it is getting more and more complicated. But what I'm going to use is it's a Japanese system, but it's a very simple system of 8 groups. So all the koi varieties that we have today can all be classified in these 8 groups. So I'm going to use those for the purpose of this video. So straight into it, first group then, group 1 is GOSANKE. Now GOSANKE is a Japanese term and it literally means the best 3, the top 3. And it's not a koi term necessarily. It can be used in any list, group, collection of anything, and it refers to the 3 most admired, the 3 best, the 3 most popular items within any group. Now when applied to koi, GOSANKE refers to 3 koi, obviously, the first of which is KOHAKU. Now KOHAKU is a white based koi. Now when I say white based, I mean the skin underneath, the background, the base of the fish is white, and that white is overlaid with a random red pattern and nothing else. So just 2 colours, very simple, but as a result of being so simple, there's nowhere to hide. So a good example is difficult to find, and you'll hear a lot of people say keeping koi varieties start and end with KOHAKU. It's the single most popular variety. Most koi collections will have KOHAKU in them, and certainly I would say it is the most popular fish in terms of numbers out there, etc., of all the koi varieties. Okay, we move on to the second variety in the GOSANKE group. Number 2 is SANKE, often also referred to as TAISHO SANKE, and to give it its correct name, TAISHO SANSHOKU. Now TAISHO in the name comes from a period of time in Japanese history, and it was a period of time between 1912 and 1926. And the emperor during this time was a gentleman called Yoshihito. So that was his actual name. That's this guy here. Whilst he was emperor of Japan, during that period he was simply referred to as the emperor, but posthumously he was referred to as the Taisho emperor. Taisho being that, referring to that specific period in time in Japanese history. And the SANKE gets the Taisho element because it was developed during that period of time. So the variety was developed during the Taisho period in Japanese history. And the Sanshoku element of the name, Sanshoku in Japanese means 3 colours. In this case the 3 colours are red, white and black. Now a SANKE is essentially starts with a white fish, again a white base, overlaid on top of that is a red random KOHAKU pattern, but the difference now being there is also a black pattern as well, so hence the 3 colours, the Sanshoku. SANKE, in terms of identifying a SANKE, the black pattern tends to be quite sparse on a SANKE. There doesn't tend to be black on the head of the koi, and there doesn't tend to be black below the lateral line or in the fins, the motoguru. Now these are kind of guidelines rather than hard and fast rules. Some fish, you know, you will get the odd SANKE may have some black on its head, so there is a grey area But if you apply those 3 guidelines, they will kind of increase your odds of being correct in terms of identifying a SANKE. So the third fish in the GOSANKE group is a SHOWA, and again, to give it its full title, SHOWA SANSHOKU. And again, the SHOWA refers to a period of time in Japanese history. So the SHOWA period followed immediately on from the TAISHO period, so started in 1926, and it ran all the way up until 1989. And the gentleman that resided over the SHOWA period was a gentleman called Hirohito, who a lot of you will remember. I certainly remember Emperor Hirohito from my younger days. And that period ran all the way up until 1989. And again, posthumously, Hirohito was referred to as the Showa Emperor because he was Emperor of Japan during the Showa period. And again, the Showa Sanshoku gets its name because the variety was developed during that Showa period of Japanese history. Again, Sanshoku, 3 colours, and again the 3 colours, red, white and black. The difference now between a Showa and a SANKE is the Showa is a black based fish, so black skin underneath, a black fish with a red and white pattern, whereas SANKE was a white fish with a black and red pattern. Showa is a black fish with a red and white pattern. And in terms of differentiating between SANKE and Showa have black on the head, they have black below the lateral line, black in the fins, and the black tends to be more dominant, so there tends to be more black on a Showa. And as I said, some fish will fall between the cracks. What appears to be a textbook Showa may actually be white based fish and actually technically be a SANKE, but ultimately, does it really matter? If it looks like a Showa, it's a Showa. If it looks like a SANKE, it's a SANKE. You'll never find out whether it ultimately technically was bang on or not, but I don't think it matters too much. But if you use those guidelines when trying to distinguish a koi, they'll stack the odds in your favour, give you a better chance of being correct. Okay, so that's GOSANKE done. That's the first group. So on to group 2. Group 2 is called UTSURIMONO. Now UTSURIMONO, Utsuri means reflections. It's the Japanese word for reflections, which kind of refers to the patterning. These are black-based fish, and technically a Showa, being a black-based fish, could come under the UTSURIMONO class, but it doesn't tend to. 3 main varieties: SHIRO Utsuri, Ki Utsuri, Hi Utsuri. If we take the SHIRO Utsuri is a black-based fish with a white pattern, hence the SHIRO, which means white. A Ki Utsuri is a black-based fish with a yellow pattern, hence the Ki meaning yellow. And a Hi Utsuri is a black-based fish with a red pattern, hence Hi meaning red. And these 3 varieties make up the UTSURIMONO group, which is group 2. Okay, moving on to group 3 then. Group 3 is MUJIMONO, and the MUJIMONO group consists of plain koi. Muji basically means plain, so plain, non-metallic, single-coloured koi. Such varieties as Chagai, Saragai and Kigoi come under this class. So that's group 3, MUJIMONO. Okay, moving on to group 4 then. Group 4 is HIKARIMONO. Now Hikari is the Japanese word for metallic, so metallic varieties come under the group, and the group has 3 subgroups, if you like. So the first subgroup is HIKARIMOYO, which is a metallic based koi with a pattern, such as a KUJAKU, for example. And the second subgroup is Hikari Utsuri. As we saw earlier, Utsuri means reflections. And a Hikari Utsuri is basically a metallic version of the UTSURIMONO varieties that we looked at earlier. So for example, Kinki Utsuri, Gin Shiro Utsuri, and Kin Showa all fall in this subgroup. And lastly, the third subgroup is Hikari Muji. So as we say, Hikari is metallic. Muji, as we saw earlier again, means plain. So a plain metallic kai. So for example, a Yamabuki Ogun comes under this subgroup, as does a platinum Ogun. And just a little note on those names. Yamabuki is a Japanese word meaning like a very pale yellowy gold colour. So technically, Ogun means gold. So technically the term Yamabuki Ogun means yellowy gold, and so it's not strictly a correct term. The actual term Ogun, meaning gold, is used to cover all colours of what we in the West refer to as a Yamabuki Ogun, but the actual term for those kai is technically the correct term is Ogun, and that covers all of those kai from the very, very, very pale yellow Ogun such as this, right through to the orangey gold coloured Ogun like such as this one. They all come under the term Ogun, but in the West we tend to call them Yamabuki Ogun. And the same applies to platinum as well. Although we tend to call it platinum Ogun, that technically means the colour platinum, gold. So not technically correct. In fact, it's simply known as a platinum. But in the West we tend to refer to them as platinum Ogun and Yamabuki Ogun. Okay, on to group 5 then. Group 5 is KAWARIMONO. Now the word KAWARIMONO is the Japanese word. The closest literal translation into English is probably oddball, and this is kind of a catch-all variety for all the kai that don't fit into any of the other groups. They all come under KAWARIMONO, and this is where this grouping system is quite vague, because there's a lot of kai in here that have their own groups for show classifications. But for this grouping system, anything that doesn't fit into the other 7 groups comes under KAWARIMONO. And KAWARIMONO, in this sense, this group refers to non-metallic kai. So yeah, a very, very long list and growing all the time, but fish in the KAWARIMONO group include Midorigoi, SHIRO MUJI, OCHIBA SHIGURE. OCHIBA SHIGURE is a very popular fish. The literal translation of OCHIBA SHIGURE is fallen leaves, and it refers to basically the brown pattern, cha, on an OCHIBA is said to resemble the autumn, so brown coloured leaves when they fall and land on water, and the water is kind of represented by the skin of the kai, which is like a silvery bluey grey colour, and the term for that particular colour is sora, which is the beginning of another variety called a soragoi, and basically an OCHIBA is a soragoi with a random pattern, brown pattern overlaid on the bluey grey base. GOROMO also come under this group. Now a GOROMO or KOROMO, there's kind of 4 fish come under this sort of general term. There's an eye GOROMO, which is a white based kai with a red pattern similar to a KOHAKU, but this time the red pattern is overlaid by a robing effect, and the term KOROMO refers is the Japanese term for robed. And in the case of the eye GOROMO, the robing has kind of a bluish tinge to the edge of the robe. The second type of GOROMO is a BUDO GOROMO, and in this sense BUDO refers to grape, and the pattern is the robing on the BUDO GOROMO is said to look like a mottled, like a grape effect. And thirdly, SUMI GOROMO, again the same as the previous fish, but this time the robing has a darker black edge to it. So they're the 3 types of GOROMO, and I mentioned there was 4 in this class, and the fourth fish that comes under this group is a GOSHIKI. GOSHIKI in Japanese means 5 colours. So again, a white based fish with a red and black pattern, and this time the robing is over the entire, or can be over the entire kai. So essentially it's a GOROMO, but with the robing over the white as well as the red. Okay, another kai in this group is an ASAGI. Now an ASAGI is said to be the very first koi variety created, and it basically has a blue-grey top half to the body with a net-like pattern to the scales, and then red present below the lateral line and sometimes on the belly and in the fins of the koi as well. And as I say, the first variety ever produced around about 1850. This variety also has a scaleless version, which is a SHUSUI. And basically a SHUSUI is a scaleless version of an ASAGI. Also in this group we have BEKKO. Now a BEKKO translates from Japanese as tortoise shell, so this refers to the patterning on the BEKKO. And these are very similar to the UTSURI koi that we saw earlier, only now where the UTSURI was a black based fish, the BEKKO is a white based fish, and very similar in the way the patterning on a BEKKO is much more sparse than with an UTSURI. So effectively a BEKKO is to an UTSURI as a SANKE is to a SHOWA. So the same kind of grey area, you know, the same rules apply. No pattern on the head, no pattern below the lateral line or in the fins. And BEKKO again comes in 3 colour variations. So there is a SHIRO BEKKO, which is a white based koi with a small amount of black pattern. There's an AKA BEKKO, which essentially is looks like a red koi with the small amount of black pattern. AKA is another Japanese word for red. Where we used he for UTSURI, we use AKA for BEKKO. I have no idea why. They both mean red. And lastly, ki BEKKO, which is a yellow fish essentially on a white base, a yellow fish with a black pattern. Okay, so that covers a lot of the main varieties in the KAWARIMONO group. There are obviously hundreds more. I'm not going to go into them all. So we'll move on to group 6. Group 6 is Ginrin, and Ginrin basically means silver scales. So a Ginrin variety is a koi with silver scales, and most scaled varieties can have a Ginrin variant. And the way you classify it, if there are silver scales present, for example, if you have a KOHAKU and it has silver scales present, then it's referred to as a Ginrin KOHAKU. You can also have a Ginrin SANKE, a Ginrin SHOWA, etc, etc. As I say, most scaled varieties can have a Ginrin variant. Okay, group 7. Group 7 are DOITSU koi. Now DOITSU are koi with no scales at all. DOITSU koi were created by crossing a scaleless food carp with a Japanese carp, thus producing scaleless Japanese carp or koi. And the name DOITSU basically is Japanese for German, because all the scaleless food carp came from Germany and were imported into Japan from Germany, and so the name DOITSU basically was adopted to represent the scaleless koi variety. Now there's many different types of DOITSU koi. For example, you can have a DOITSU KOHAKU, a DOITSU SANKE, a DOITSU SHOWA, and many other types. And as with Ginrin, if an example of a particular variety is a scaleless example, then you put the word DOITSU at the beginning of the normal variety name to create the DOITSU variant. Okay, group 8. Group 8 is TANCHO. Now TANCHO refers to a koi with a single red, ideally a circle on its head, and the single red circle is said to look like the Japanese flag. And the key with the TANCHO is if there's red anywhere else on the koi at all other than the spot on its head, then it isn't a TANCHO. TANCHO comes in several varieties. A genuine TANCHO is just a white based koi with the red spot. And to give you an idea of how rare this is, you can't actually breed a Tancho. That's basically a KOHAKU, and it just so happens that the red pattern falls in the shape of a round circle right in the middle of its head and nowhere else. So the chances of spawning a KOHAKU are extremely low, and hence why they are quite rare and tend to be quite expensive if you find a good one. Also, Tancho SANKE, Tancho SHOWA, Tancho GOSHIKI, for example. Many different kinds. And that's it for the koi I wanted to cover today in this video. Obviously there are many more, and it is a very complicated subject, but I've covered the main varieties there that you'll see. I think that's a good starting point and enough for this first video. So yeah, as always, please do have a look at the other videos on my channel. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. It does really help. If you like the video, give me a like, and do leave a comment as well, good or bad. I like to see what people think of the videos. I like, you know, any feedback at all is welcome. I reply to all comments. I do enjoy reading your comments and replying. So until the next video, take care of yourselves, and please do stay safe.